In at 10, animatronics. We can joke all we want about how Afton has a hardcore bloodlust in this series, but his desire for human destruction has been there since the start. Thanks to the fast facts found in FNAF AR's files, we learned that the Funtime robots, the ones used in Sister Location, were actually some of the first robots Afton ever made. Not exactly the first, but among the first. And that they were built with special containment chambers inside to store away items, which we all know is code for children's storage tanks, which we see the Funtimes actually have in their blueprints from FNAF 6. So this means that Afton has been wanting to kill kids since before his kids had died. Hell, even maybe before his kids were born, depending on the timeline. Which at this point is as simple as my feelings for Vanessa, which is not simple at all. If anyone cosplays Vanessa, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. Possibly killed wife. This hasn't been confirmed as of yet, so it's currently not canon. Many people still consider William Afton offing his wife to be the story of her demise, even though technically we know nothing about her, and she could still be alive for all we know. Many people consider her to have died in either a car crash or because William killed her, and those are the most common thoughts on the matter. Although the her dying in a car accident thing came from a FNAF original music video that was probably using Minecraft characters that is in no way canon to the series. I've had people yell at me in my DMs telling me that it's canon that she died in a car accident, but no, it's not. It's not even canon that she died, really, but the potential is still there that William was the reason she kicked the animatronic parts filled bucket. Since it's only a possibility though, it's only number 9. If it gets confirmed, I'm more than willing to bump it up higher, because statistically speaking, your spouse is the person most likely to kill you, so she should have been on her guard. And it ain't missing children's incident. I mean, this is a fairly low-hanging fruit since it's the inciting moment for the whole series, but I think it's worth calling out at least number 8. The missing children's incident, in case you forgot, is the infamous incident where 5 kids go missing inside of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and are never seen again. Police investigated but were never able to find the bodies, thus they had to let their suspect, in this case William Afton, go due to a lack of evidence. However, this is one of the most horrifically painful moments that you can think of, especially if you're a parent yourself. 5 families went into Freddy Fazbear's wanting their kids to have the time of their lives in 1985, but left without their favorite people. They had the time of their lives, alright. It just so happened to also be the end of their lives. And not only that, but Afton ends up getting away with it since the police were terrible at their jobs or were getting paid off. Still not sure which one is the case in this series, but the missing children's incident is one of the most messed up things to ever happen in this series, but without it we wouldn't have the series. At least it's all fake, right? And at 7, Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night was a really interesting turning point for the FNAF series. The original Afton storyline was at a close, and this game was the ultimate capstone to that, with some important lore hints in the form of voice lines that played when you get killed, which is good because it happens a lot. However, this game still fits into the FNAF story and serves as a link between the original story and the new one. The new story being Afton trying to escape the video game world he got himself locked in, or now being burn trap or whatever the hell he is. But we originally interpreted this game all wrong, since we initially thought that William was burning in hell this time, or stuck in purgatory, but as all Supernatural fans know, purgatory is just a giant forest where monsters kill each other for eternity. But in reality, this must just be what he's seeing in his charging station in the basement of the Pizzaplex, since honestly, that's really the only way that this makes sense. At least if it's still Afton. Eventually he wakes up, which is him beating 50-20 mode in fights against us, which results in him getting grabbed by the blob and maybe surviving, because we still don't know. And at 6, lied about Remnant. Now this isn't confirmed, much like the fact that he possibly killed his wife. However, this seems like the most likely explanation to me. So if you want a full explanation as to why I think Afton was the one who lied about Remnant, go check out that video linked up in the iCard. But I'm going to wrap this up quickly here. Basically, there have been 3 fires so far that were meant to finish off William Afton, and none of them have worked. The reason Henry tried fire was because that's supposed to be the thing that can burn off Remnant. However, Remnant can also be found in liquid form, so how can it be molten but also be burnt by fire? It makes more sense that William made up the lie that he could be killed by fire, so Henry would keep trying and failing to kill him, so he wouldn't have to worry about actually dying, since literally every time he's been caught in the fire, he has survived. And the other animatronics infused with Remnant also survived, like Baby, the puppet, and entered in FNAF 6, as we see from the blob in Security Breach. Halfway through into number 5, Elizabeth. Speaking of mistakes, let's talk about his own daughter. I get it, because she's a mistake. Actually, we don't know. She might be. I don't know how William thought that this was a good idea though. I feel like this guy, trying to brainstorm how to capture kids more efficiently And like, he hadn't even started killing at this point. He's like, oh, I know, I can make a robot to lure them in with ice cream and then grab them where they're close. Okay, so what's it gonna look like? Oh, let's call my daughter and ask for some design tips, you know? Then like Elizabeth ends up making the most predictable move ever and going directly against her father's instructions like a kid to go see the robot. That's basically perfect in her eyes. William, why? Why did you think that this wasn't going to happen? You had to lock your child in his room so that he wouldn't go to Freddy Fazbear's fucking pizza, and you think that your daughter isn't gonna walk up to an animatronic, especially at the age where they want to piss you off. And they're also seemingly loaded because you own a successful entertainment business, okay? Spoiled rich kids listening to their dad when they say to not touch a giant robot that was made to appeal to kids. Yeah, that's gonna work. God, you're a special kind of stupid. It's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. It is truly embarrassing, bro. Okay? All you needed to do was have a blacklist and say, don't kill these kids. And you would have been fine. But no. And at 4 later that night, the Midnight Motorist minigame seems simple enough, but the true horror of this minigame comes from the implications of it. Since in the game files, the minigame is known as Later That Night. Most people akin the game to what happened after William kills Charlotte outside Fredbear's Family Diner in FNAF 2's Take Cake minigame. But if this is true, this is probably one of the scariest moments in all of FNAF history. This man just killed someone, but then goes home to his kids, reprimands his son and abuses him by locking him in his room so much that he had to break his window to escape. Plus, think of all the people driving past him, unaware of the violent crime that he had just committed. It's scary because this is the case in the real world too. Technically speaking, anyone we encounter can be a serial killer. And that is a horrific thought, since also you're only alive because everyone you've ever encountered has chosen not to kill you, which only makes the whole anyone could be a serial killer thing even worse. And in this case, this man literally just killed someone and then comes home and is going to yell at his son who's been in his room all day. Like, god damn, bro, how much residual anger do you have suppressed inside your body? Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Dream Theory. There is also the possibility that none of this was real, and that everything is actually a dream, which kind of negates the whole origin story thing, because in a dream, we don't need to worry about origin stories. We just worry about what's happening in the present moment. I mean, dreaming about yourself having a nightmare is a whole other level of meta, like Inception style, but also not really, because in this scenario, Crying Child would actually be dreaming about dreaming, whereas in Inception, they don't know that any of those dreams are actually dreams. It's also interesting since if Crying Child is dreaming all of this, he dreams that he also died, but then somehow the dream continues past that, which I've never had happen before. If I die in a dream, I wake up, which in my opinion makes more of a case for him being the vengeful spirit, but I don't like dream theory because it feels cheap, so I'm not even going to entertain the thought of it any more than I have to. If dream theory is correct, which seems to be no longer the case, but maybe it was intended beforehand, then the origin of William is totally obsolete, so let's hope it's not dream theory. Penultimately, in at number 2, First Victim. They say a killer's first victim is the most important, since it usually indicates what got them to start killing or other psychological clues that they could use to predict his next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst ways possible. He starts killing off kids and then sticks with that MO throughout the rest of his criminal career. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something even I fear. I'm not a parent, so I can only imagine how this must have felt. And if that was me, I'd be doing a lot more than burning down restaurants in an attempt to put that down. I'd be doing it myself, especially if he had killed my daughter when she was only 3 years old. Like, I can feel the rage brewing and I don't even have someone that I could, in theory, make a daughter with. And finally, in at number 1, killed his kids. The worst thing that Afton has done by far is gotten his own kids killed. Sure, he may not have done it directly, but his actions ended up resulting in all 3 of his kids' demises. Him killing Charlotte got Fredbear's closed, which resulted in him having to open up Circus Babies, which made him have to dust off Baby and the other Fun Times, which were designed to kill in the first place. Baby ends up grabbing and crushing Elizabeth, resulting in her possessing the animatronic. He superpowered the jaw of the Fredbear animatronic used in the new Freddy Fazbear's, which ends up crushing his youngest son's skull, since that was not a spring lock failure due to all the spring locks being active, since it was in animatronic mode, not suit mode, so there was nothing to fail, meaning that he had to have been crushed by the power of his jaw. And Now while you could argue that it was Michael's fault, why would he think that Fredbear's mouth was overpowered? As the suit technician, William knew what was going on and intentionally souped up the jaw power. And then he gets Michael killed when he sends him down to find his sister in sister location, which ends up getting him stuffed with innards and then letting himself burn in Pizzeria Simulator. So yeah, William's actions got all 3 of his kids killed just because he had to kill his business partner's daughter. And it's in FNAF 3. After FNAF 3's ending, when we learn about the fire, we thought that was it. We for at least 20 seconds until people started brightening the image of the final screen, which is just like classic FNAF by now. And then that's when we saw Springtrap sitting in the shadows behind the stuffed animal that was in the image of the news article about the fire. Now I have no idea how the photographer didn't see that, or if William has the news outlets working for him too, or whatever, but this is absolutely terrifying. And it's really what started us down the rabbit hole of the several hoops that we would have to jump through to find more clues and lore. Brightening this one image made us have to comb through the files of mobile games. Anyway, this image set us on a path to thinking that William survived the fire and that this would not be the last FNAF game. I don't know if this was supposed to be, or if this was just an Easter egg. Like if it was meant to allow for more games in the series if Scott wanted to, because originally he wanted to end it with FNAF 3, but hey, either way it happened and here we are 6 games and 15 books later. And at 9, Help Wanted ending. The final minigame of Help Wanted is Pizza Party, where you have to navigate your way through the various rooms of the pizzerias to get to your pizza party. The whole time you're having to avoid animatronics that will sometimes jump scare you, sometimes not. But the real horror comes from when you get to your own party. It wasn't thrown by your friends, it wasn't thrown by your family, it was thrown by Glitch Trap. That's right, Dio Fluffy in the back room. After seeing the ruined bodies of Chica and Bonnie, Glitch Trap appears from behind a curtain. Your final moment is spent walking through that curtain as the screen goes black. Next thing you know, you're on stage with a microphone in your hand. That's right, you've been stuffed. Put in a Freddy suit by none other than William Afton himself. But how? He wasn't supposed to be in the game, right? He was some code that got scanned in by accident. Well, doesn't matter now. That's one of the scariest moments of any game though. You experiencing what every child has once William has shown them where the other pizzas are kept. Just, Jesus, I don't even, it gives me chills, especially with that dancing at the end that makes it worse. And at 8, the first one. They say a killer's first victim is the most important, since it usually indicates what got them to start killing or other psychological issues that they could use to predict their next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst way possible. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something that even I fear, okay? I'm not a dad, I think, so I can only imagine how this must have felt. And if that was me, I wouldn't just be burning down restaurants in an attempt to send William to hell. I would be doing that myself, an express route right downstairs. And at 7, stored his daughter. While we know Afton isn't the best father, I think it's something else to end up locking your robot possessed by the soul of your dead daughter into an animatronic testing facility. That seems a bit too far if you ask for my humble opinion. But nevertheless, he still did it, and that's what Sister Location is all about. And William was even the one who sent us as Michael down there in the first place, and then we get shoved full of innard bits so that they can escape. Did William know about that plan? Unsure, because in FNAF 6, Baby says that she'll make her dad proud. So was that William's intention to send us down there so Baby could get out? And if that was the case, why lock her down in there in the first place? I mean, if she was your daughter, why not have her just chill around the house, right? In the books, Baby is able to transform between Baby and a human looking animatronic at will. So why not add this to that version, and then you can have your daughter back, albeit a little more messed up. But more like you in the long run, right? I don't know. This family is messed the hell up, and nothing makes sense. And at 6, FNAF 6. William surviving the FNAF 6 fire was much harder to believe when it came to it, at least before Bunny Call was released. However, some fans seemed to note that during the final cutscene of FNAF 6, during Henry's speech, while the other animatronics were engulfed by flames, Scrap Trap was ahead of them. This was especially hard to believe given that we thought Ultimate Custom Night took place in Hell, which is really impossible to get to unless you die. Well, me being the exception. I party with Satan regularly. He can't hold his liquor. It's kind of weird. I don't understand it. Either way, this was all proven to be true when Bunny Call was released and William was in the hospital in the man in room 1280. However, Haha. This eventually was proven also not to be the case because it's FNAF. I gotta say, that's like the biggest troll in the entire series. Or at least like one of the biggest trolls. Like, come on, Scott, really? You kill him off only to make him alive in the books, and then kill him off in that same story, and then you prove that he's alive again in Security Breach? Or maybe he isn't even alive anymore and is just a possessed animatronic? Who knows at this point? Not even Scott. Not even Scott, not even Steel Wool, not even whoever's taking over next. Halfway through in at number 5, meta theory. Now, honestly, this isn't possible. Not even in the slightest. Unless Scott had some seriously messed up story in mind. But my meta theory is just because I want a chance to yell in this video. And to be frank, this would be my serial killer origin if I was Afton, okay? What if somehow, some way, William ended up seeing the FNAF Rule 34 art that's online? Specifically about his various forms, particularly Springtrap. I mean, that would be pretty blasphemous if I'm honest. And time travel does exist in the FNAF universe thanks to Into the Pit. So in theory, Afton could have gone to the future and seen the absurd Springtrap fan art and then gone back and had been so flabbergasted and traumatized from seeing himself lubing up Troll Tower that he went nuts and started killing the people responsible for his horrific perversion of his life. Whether it be specific people that did that or just the demographic that would grow up to then do that, okay? It could have just been the ships as well, like seeing himself shipped with the likes of animatronics that his kids end up possessing would certainly cause me to lash out. So yeah, not possible in the slightest, but funny as hell to think about, and frankly, understandable. In at 4, assimilate. The ending of FNAF VR, like the real ending where you fight Glitchtrap, is certainly a scary moment. It also just sounds weird, you know? Like this guy just pops into your VR headset, then takes over your body so that you end up killing for him. It's kind of messed up, and actually not kind of, that's incredibly messed up. She ends up knowing what's going on too. Like she actively talks in hushed tones and about how she can't talk about it to her therapist. So like what the hell's the dynamic here? And by she and her, I mean Vanny, obviously. I mean, like, possessing someone is already pretty messed up, but then, like, causing them to make a rabbit costume because you're still kinky furry is a whole other set of equations. I don't even want to talk about how messed up that is. She knows there's an evil inside her, but she can't do anything about it. She fears for her life, which only makes me wonder what William's been saying in her head, and she knows what's going on. Ah, man, like, being willing to lock a kid in a lost and found room until the police arrive, even though you know that William's gonna take over, that's that. Man, you really need a therapist. So does William, honestly. Getting close to the end, and number 3, crying child. I've had a ton of people complain to me about how Crying Child's death wasn't William's fault, since he wasn't the one who put Crying Child's head in Fredbear's mouth, okay? And then the spring locks failed because he was crying. But let's be honest, there is no logical way that animatronic jaw should have crushed his skull. Even the spring locks, okay? The spring locks weren't active and would have required a lot of power to actually accomplish this goal with just normal opening and closing power of a jaw. So the only way that Crying Child's skull could have been crushed was if Afton had intentionally, for some reason, supercharged the jaw of the animatronic. Which it would make sense if he wanted to use it as a kill machine, like as a prototype fun time, or maybe he wanted to use it as a backup kill suit in case Spring Body ended up failing. Figuring more power in the jaw would help him, which clearly it did, just in literally the worst way possible. There's also no way that this is a spring lock failure, guys, okay? The suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning that the spring lock mechanisms that are the reason that it could fail, because they're used to keep the robotic parts to the size that someone can fit in the suit, weren't being used because it was in animatronic mode. So they don't need to keep the robotic parts to the side. The spring lock failure problem comes when those mechanisms are put under stress of having to keep the parts away from the person in the suit, okay? And then if they get wet, that's when they can loose, and then that's why they can't get wet, okay? Keep in mind that the term spring lock in this context is being referred to the parts that move the robotic bits away inside the actual suit. Since the suit is also referred to as a spring lock, I feel like I kind of need to clarify that. But ultimately, in number 2, the blob. The true ending is seemingly one of the scariest parts of the game because it contains a load of things. After making your way into Burntrap's area, Freddy will be taken over by Afton's newest form, and it's up to Gregory to defeat him by using the 3 monitors to keep burning him. Players will also need to avoid the animatronic enemies that come after Gregory Gregory and use the doors to temporarily lock them out if they can. When Springtrap is burned though, the blob, which has like that tentacle monster thing, will attack and make sure that he doesn't get free, which is really weird and horrifying considering how, you know, I don't know if he's dead. Freddy and Gregory will be shown escaping and then sitting on a hill together, but the tentacle monster's identity was never revealed. But originally, after this game, the final Fazbear Frights book would have released, which would have showed us that the tentacle monster we would have been talking about is in fact Baby, or I guess Elizabeth Afton, or it is in the books. But I guess while they share similar elements, they aren't the same thing, because Baby's eyes are off. So it could be that the original 5 missing children are getting their revenge on Afton, since those could be the souls inside of Ennard, which would have been Molten Freddy, and that's seemingly the face that the blob is using, even though it's Funtime Freddy. But you know what? The only way to explain this series fully is to say that every game takes place in a different universe. Every game is separate from each other. That's the only way it works. And finally, and in number 1, the spring locking. I believe we all know this story by now. Everything was going well at first, okay? The cops couldn't pin him down, and he was on his way to immortality. Well, technically he had it already, thanks to the one you should not have killed, but once William discovered Remnant, however, he spiraled. He wanted to use it to fuel his life and truly make him immortal. So, in an effort to study it further, William lures the possessed animatronics to the back room where they can't access it, and then he uses it to dismantle them, planning to melt them down into their endoskeletons to fuse that soul metal into his body. However, by doing this, he unknowingly releases the souls of the victims that he claimed however many years ago. I think it might have been like 2 or something, I don't know. Shocked from seeing his literal murder victims, he ends up fleeing into his spring bodysuit, which also makes him feel powerful. However, his haste coupled with the leaking room ended up causing the spring locks to fail, crushing him in torturous agony for the next 30 years. However, he didn't die from this, because as we learned in the Man in Room 1280, he was being kept alive by the spirit of yet another victim. So he's been living in agony for the past 30 years, and that makes him damn well deserving of the number 1 spot. Before you ask, Garvey isn't even a thing, okay? So like, I'm not gonna talk about Garvey. It's not even in the FNAF canon. Why are you asking me about it? Leave me alone. And at 10, killing where you eat. The biggest mistake that William ever made, in my personal opinion, and I will say this until the day I die, was the fact that he killed people in his restaurant, okay? It's unknown if this was always his intention, but like, come on. Who would think that this is a good idea? Like, who in the comments wants to come at me and try to justify killing your prime demographic in your place of business, okay? Dealers don't kill their customers, okay? Mechanics only bleed their clients dry of their money, not their blood. So like, why would William think that this is a good idea? Literally, go anywhere else. This is just like, it's basically killing in your house and then like calling the cops and saying, hey, I killed someone in my house. It's putting unwanted attention and scrutiny on literally everything you do just so they can try to catch you. Like, you even end up getting banned from going back into your building when the investigation is underway. And it's not like it helped your business. You had to close the first location because of this, resulting in you having to open another one that killed your daughter. So, yeah. Pretty embarrassing if you ask me. All you had to do was go to the park or some random alleyway or like a laser tag place, and then boom, your kids would be alive, you'd be harder to suspect, and you'd be rich from your business, because honestly it was a good idea, but you're done. And at 9, Cassidy. Assuming for this scenario that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed, this was also one of the most embarrassing things that William could have done. Or maybe he doesn't consider it a mistake, because like, the one you should not have killed is kind of keeping him alive after all, although it's still unclear if they're doing that currently or not. But they're doing it as a way to make him suffer. So I feel like getting possessed by a child is pretty embarrassing. I mean, that like, depending on the angle that you want to like look at, that I'm going with it's embarrassing. If I was possessed by a child, I would be embarrassed. I don't think I am, hopefully. But even if he does like consider this a good thing, or if Cassidy doesn't end up being the one you should not have killed, which in my opinion she's not, but like killing those 5 kids that made up the missing children's incident that likely ended with Cassidy, that's, dude, come on, we already talked about it. You killed in the wrong place. It's embarrassing. So, you know what? If you don't want to count Cassidy as the embarrassing mistake, count the missing children's incident as that mistake, all right? Just count it whatever way you want. It's on the list, deal with it. And at 8, Charlotte. While yes, Charlotte may have been Afton's first true kill, causing his descent into absolute freaking madness. In the games, Charlotte ends up possessing the puppet, who then gives life to the other animatronics, which causes you to disassemble them and release their spirit. In both universes where William kills Charlotte, it comes back to bite him in the since Henry comes after him for it, which results in what should be his death multiple times over. And not to mention how in the book specifically, unbeknownst to her at least, she is an animatronic robot that was meant to replace the daughter that Henry had lost. But it was also revealed that the animatronic is also Baby. You know, the baby animatronic that we all know and love? Yeah, who can switch between her forms at will, and then the human version doesn't remember being Baby. So yeah, Charlotte in the books is also Baby, which is also in the games William's daughter. And at 7, accident. Now, aside from me, maybe this whole deal was an accident, right? Maybe more so than just his kids getting killed by robots intended to kill. Maybe William's real first victim wasn't Charlotte. Maybe he did kill his wife, but accidentally. Maybe they were a bit too rough, or maybe she had a condition that made her susceptible to falling or something, and William accidentally tripped her. Maybe when that happened, in whatever way it did, William saw the life leave her eyes and liked it, but then wanted to see how it would look on a kid. So he set about making robots that would help him see it. But his kids got instead. But then he still liked the sight of it so much that he continued. Maybe he wasn't built like it, but the sight of watching someone die, maybe even his wife or lover, awakened something deep within him that then propelled him to kill. It's nothing new, it's happened to plenty of people before, but William is dangerous. He knows how to cover his tracks. Despite the absolute buffoonery of his methods, the cops were none the wiser. Or maybe he was just paying them off. And at 6, Henry. Why did you think that killing Charlotte wouldn't have any consequences? Okay? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter. That was probably pretty obvious to him, especially since he already suspected you were up to something, and he took extra care to protect his daughter, and then she still died. That is 100% the superhero origin story that Henry needed. A vengeful father if I have ever seen one, and he didn't even need vengeance when he was putting that green bracelet on his daughter. So then you know what? Then he's after you, or it seems like it, and you don't kill him next? Like, killing Henry would have done so many wonders for your criminal career. I mean, like, yeah, the cops were already suspicious of you. As long as they can't find a body, they've already said that, like, they can't arrest you without a body, apparently. So if they won't put you away for 5 missing kids, they won't put you away for a missing father as well. Especially a jury who has to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you're the killer. And I mean, like, I don't know, that's kind of up in the air, and like, you'd rather not go to trial if you were being charged with murder, but still, without a body, there can't really be any forensic evidence. So if you just, I don't know, throw it in a wood chipper. Again, these videos are going to be the reason I get hauled into the police station. Halfway through into number 5, Vanessa. Possessing Vanessa was certainly one of the more messed up things that William did. It just sounds weird, you know? Like this guy pops up into your VR headset, then takes over your body without your consent, so now you end up killing for him. That's kind of messed up. Actually, no, not kind of, that's incredibly messed up. I mean, she knows what's going on too. She actively talks in hushed tones about how she can't talk about it to her therapist. So like, what the hell is the dynamic here? I mean, possessing someone is already pretty messed up, but then causing them to make a rabbit costume so you're still a furry is a whole other set of kinks that I don't even want to talk about. And then she knows that there's an evil inside her, but she can't do anything about it. She fears for her life, which only makes me wonder what William has been saying to her, and she's now, with full knowledge of her darker half, willing to lock a kid in a lost and found room until the police arrive, despite never calling the police, and then lets that darker half track him down. And at 4, fun times. Now, there's no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state of the art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping you could shed some light on those. Well, she can dance, she can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips. She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream. Yeah, with all due respect, those weren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton. Yeah, that classic line of William seemingly being interrogated by the police that plays the first time you open up Sister Location is definitely showcasing how embarrassingly stupid this guy is. The cops know what these animatronics are doing and are capable of, and what they were designed to do, so they instantly end up being even more suspicious of him. And considering, like, the circumstances, we can also assume that Elizabeth is inside the robot. Like, there's no way that they confiscated the animatronics before they had to close Circus Babies. So she is definitely still inside the robot. So they're definitely keeping a closer eye on him and his daughter's in a robot that they're asking him about, okay? Bro, yeah, why? Designing the fun times as killbots before seemingly you actually had the rest of the FNAF roster, definitely an embarrassing moment. Especially considering how one of the fun times was meant to symbolize your dead wife. I don't wanna know how you were trying to fill that one with souls, bro. Leave me out of it. Getting close to the end in number 3, Burn Trap. William appears as the optional yet canon final boss in Security Breach, named Burn Trap according to the game files. He only appears in the canon ending, which is the Afton ending, or the true ending, whatever you want to call it. This form is the result of Vanny downloading William's soul from the digital realm into an old hybrid abomination of an animatronic suit, endoskeleton, and the little remains of his corpse, which just seems to be an extremely burnt scrap trap animatronic. Hence the Burn Trap name. Burn Trap's new rotten form appears to be his old but modified, tattered greenish brown spring Bonnie suit that has become even more severely withered, tattered, and burned because, you know, it's been through like 3 fires. With the whole entire lower jaw ripped out, revealing his skull covered in blood with some burnt flesh remaining and some metallic eyes and small pupils. The suit is missing fur with the exception of their chest, hips, legs, upper legs. The rest is extremely burnt. He's very charred. He's like charcoal at this point. Like you can use him to forge a sword. His old endoskeleton has seemingly been replaced with the newer endoskeletons that the Glamrock animatronics have, and that makes him even taller and gives him sharp claws and fingers. So yeah, I don't think I need to explain why this is on this list. And ultimately, in at number 2, Princess Quest. The whole reason Princess Quest is a thing in Security Breach was to lock Vanny away and prevent her from regaining control of her body. So why did William create or allow for the creation of a fail-safe to allow her to escape? I mean, sure, they didn't expect the size of a 4-year-old kid to come along and figure it out, but given the track record of William, you'd think that he'd have smartened up after at least 40 years, but that's like having a self-destruct button on the thing that's gonna save the world, that the villain can just come up and go, boop. That's like some Austin Powers level comedy. Or like if the Flash had a steal my speed button on like him anywhere at any point. It's just stupid. If you want something to work, why give it away to fail? And then you let it happen. It fails because of a kid the size of a 4-year-old. Maybe, not even. This is one of the dumbest, most embarrassing things that William has had happen, and probably like the 3rd dumbest overall, okay? But seriously, what was the point behind the way to undo your evil plans? Well, that's like one of the most ridiculous, unbelievable things in a story about serial killers getting possessed and animatronic robots getting possessed. I know that it was like it was required so that we could have a good ending to this game, but like that ending isn't even canon, so we don't care about it. Okay, it was one of the dumbest things that has ever happened in this series. Why? Why would you do that? And finally, into number 1, Springtrap. Being the genius behind some of the most advanced robotic technology in the universe, we expect a lot from William. Okay, he's the suit technician, he's the main killer, he seems to be the CEO of the company, so he should really know what he's doing, right? Apparently not. Since after discovering that the original 5 animatronics were possessed, he disassembled them to learn their secrets. This inadvertently released the spirits of the original 5 victims, though, causing William to panic, which is understandable since firstly, they're freaking ghost kids that he never expected to see again, and also because they're the ghost kids that he killed. Okay, so this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that has handled the suit maintenance for years and has explained to every employee the proper procedure for the spring lock suits, including the spring body suit that he uses, ends up climbing inside the suit in a panic in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful and maybe scare off the ghost kids. However, he's so smart that he didn't notice the moisture in the room, the leaking ceiling, which causes the spring locks that were active at this moment since it was in suit mode to fail, which would have killed him had he not been possessed by the one you should not have killed. Yeah, embarrassing. And at 10, losing kids. This seems to be the most popular theory about why William Afton started his whole killing spree thing, because seemingly he didn't kill anyone until after Elizabeth and Crying Child died at the hands of the various animatronics. But there are those who also treat this as a proven fact. But honestly, this is proven to not be the case, okay? It is impossible for William to be a psychotic killer because his kids died. As we learned from FNAF AR's Fast Facts, William made the Funtime animatronics around the same time as the Springlock animatronics. So So from day one, he made the robots that were intended to kill. Plus, if you want to ignore FNAF AR's fast facts entirely, the fact that Elizabeth and Crying Child got killed by animatronics that were designed to kill, hence why they were killed by them, even disproves that idea before FNAF AR. So while it would make sense, it's not truly the case. And some of these other explanations may end up making more sense. Although, to be frank, I don't think that anyone actually knows the real origin, not even Scott Cawthon. And at 9, divorce. Another popular reason is possibly because William's wife left him, and that drove him crazy. I mean, being a single dad to 3 kids would already be pretty tough, but maybe this idea goes beyond this. A lot of people also assume that William killed his wife, considering how she's not around, and nobody really ever mentions her. This honestly could be an option, but only because we know so little about the home life that William had before the games, or even before 1983 when we see the sister location 8-bit scenes. So theories about this are entirely plausible, even if they just rely on human nature rather than evidence present within the games. I mean, these are human characters after all. They don't have as much meat to them as the theories involving info from the games or even from the books, but it's still interesting to see the possibilities like this. And like, did William get divorced? Was his wife his first victim? Who knows? Probably not even Scott. Honestly, I doubt William's motivation is something that like he thought of when he was throwing out the last game, when he thought that the game would end up failing. Yet here we are, 9 games and like 8 years later almost. And it ain't Phone Guy. Hold on, okay, hold on. Hear me out. I think that there is still the possibility, slight chance that despite what Scott might have said, that the Phone Guy could still be the killer. Now, this is probably almost definitely not the case. This is a list about speculating, right? Well, what if William is indeed the one recording these training tapes, and what we hear is what we see play out in FNAF 3's minigames? I mean, we thought that this was possible before, but then when they gave him a name, we figured that they were different people. But maybe they also gave us Phone Guy's name without us knowing it. I mean, what other reason would he have to be an Ultimate Custom Night? Unless the vengeful spirit heard the recordings and knew what Phone Guy sounded like? Plus, the animatronics bashing on the door could just be when William goes to disassemble them, which accidentally releases their spirits. But the tape's cut off before he ends up getting spring locked. Because, like, I don't know about you, but if I saw the ghosts of my victims, I wouldn't think like, oh, I need to vlog this. We have 2 different versions of Afton in Ultimate Custom Night already, so maybe there is a secret 3rd version, aside from the one we play as at least. And it's 7, hiding spot. Okay, again, how the absolute living hell did you get away with this? The smell of rotting bodies would ruin any place that you're in, okay? It doesn't matter if you're eating, if you're dancing, I don't know, committing murder. The smell of rotting bodies always puts a damper on things. And the heat from the animatronics moving on like all their insides, because you know, it's heat. It would speed up the decomposition and make it stink even worse, because heat always makes things worse. And the animatronics are in front of people every single day, okay? People even started complaining that the animatronics were leaking blood, as well as, quote, smelling like death. If that was real life, William would be gone, okay? He would have been caught instantaneously. Like, oh man, we never found the bodies of these kids. Wait, hold up. These animatronics are leaking blood, smell like death. Call Agent Booth. We need to check these. Then they found the missing kids. All right, Afton is under arrest. They already suspected him. And I mean, like, having bodies hidden in your animatronics where you're the technician for the suits and also, I don't know, the CEO. Yeah, you're instantly incarcerated. I don't know. I don't know how this wasn't just a clean-cut case. Okay, I know that was important for the story of the games, but it shouldn't have happened, all right? His whole plan is a dumpster fire of embarrassment, and I love it. And at 6, demon deal. This may be because my brain is watching too much Supernatural, but the possibility does exist that in a world with possession, living corpses, sentient biological code that can possess animatronics and people, and where spirits can possess people to keep them alive to suffer, that there is in fact also a hell and demons. And if there are demons, maybe this is why William is absolutely god insane. Maybe he sold his soul to a demon so that his business would be successful. However, so that the Reaper wouldn't come to collect, William decided to start making sacrifices. Or maybe it was demanded of him as part of his deal or something. Maybe the demon he sold his soul to wanted a little snack every once in a while, you know, some baby back ribs. Or maybe, due to this deal, he seeked out getting possessed by a vengeful spirit so that he wouldn't actually be able to be sent to hell. Or maybe that was only a theory, but he was willing to try anything in order to keep himself from eternal damnation. Just an idea. I mean, it's It's definitely unlikely, probably like 99% not the case, but it's still interesting. Halfway through into number 5, Midnight Motorist. The Midnight Motorist minigame seems simple enough, but the true horror of this minigame comes from the implications of it. Since in the game files, the minigame is known as Later That Night. Most people akin this game to what happened after William kills Charlotte outside of Fredbear's Family Diner in FNAF 2's Take Cake minigame. But if this is true, this is probably one of the scariest moments in all of FNAF history. This man just killed someone, and then he goes home to his kids. He reprimands his son and abuses him by locking him in his room so much that he had to break a window to escape. Plus, think of all the people driving past him, unaware of the violent crime that he had just committed. It's scary because this is the case in the real world too. Technically speaking, at least. Anyone we encounter could be a serial killer. And that's a horrific thought. In at 4, Sacrifice. Maybe this isn't about fan art or a demon deal at all. Maybe Afton is just a religious man who worships the old gods, more specifically, the dark ones, and believes, like some ancient cultures, that sacrifice is the key to a peaceful and long life. I mean, in the end, if this is the case, he wasn't wrong. His misdeeds end up getting him possessed, which allows him to live for much longer than he should have without food or water, after being spring locked for 30 years, and through multiple fires. I mean, if this is his motivation, this would absolutely make sense to him and actually to him be proven true. Like, maybe he doesn't know that his body is being possessed, at least until Ultimate Custom Night when the vengeful spirit reveals himself. Maybe until that point he genuinely thought that he was being kept alive by the gods. Hell, maybe even after the one you should not have killed reveals himself, he's still thinking that it's one of the gods instead of one of his victims. Crazy people believe crazy things, right? So who knows? Maybe Afton just thinks he's doing the Dark Lord's bidding in exchange for eternal life, or maybe an end to his suffering after losing his wife, or something like that. Okay, there are many explanations, although I doubt that this one is very likely. I still like talking about it. It's fun to explore. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Stuffed. One of the most deranged things that William Afton did was stuff the bodies of the original 5 missing children into the original 5 animatronics: Bonnie, Foxy, Freddy, Chica, and Golden Freddy. And the craziest part is that he didn't get caught for it. Yeah, he didn't. The animatronics smelt like death, started leaking blood and other fluids, and the police didn't bat an eye. He put these bodies in animatronics that perform for other kids and their parents every single day. How does anyone think that that's a good idea? Unless it was his way of displaying his kills or something, like some of the crime shows like to mention. How some killers enjoy the world knowing what they did, since it helps them feel more powerful or something, fuels their ego. Like, maybe even if they didn't know that the bodies were there, William could be using that as an ego boost, which is messed up. And also ruins the whole he did it because his kids were dying theory, aside from the whole him killing before his kids died thing. Also, how did the police not confiscate the animatronics for evidence? But ultimately, in at number 2, Time Loop. Could Afton be stuck in a Groundhog Day-like scenario? Instead of a day, it's however many years. I mean, this one is absolutely wild and 100% guaranteed not to be the case. But ever since time travel was introduced into the series, it's a whole other thing now. Literally, the first Fazbear Frights book had to do us like that. Anyway, what if William actually started living his life on repeat? The same thing over and over. That would drive anyone crazy. I mean, like, just look at what happened to Bill Murray. But if we ended up thinking about it, if William didn't think that there were consequences and then he went berserk, maybe he started offing people because he could, but then the cycle broke. It's absolutely ridiculous, and again, 100% not the case, but it's pretty interesting to consider. I mean, the time traveling ball pit had the golden Bonnie and was introduced for a reason, right? Maybe it's to show that Afton is all about time travel or something along those lines. Again, no way this is real, so don't yell at me in the comments. It's a stupid idea, but it's fun to think about nonetheless. And finally, in at number 1, Psychopath. There's also the classic reason that there is no reason, and that William is just your typical run-of-the-mill psychopath who has no remorse for any of his actions. Now, the vengeful spirit, referred to as the one you should not have killed, seems to prevent this theory from being true, since if he had no remorse, nobody would be considered the one you should not have killed. But remember that actually, they named themselves. William didn't actually name them because the manifestations in his head were made by this vengeful spirit who wanted him to suffer. So William might not have considered them, whether it be Cassidy or Crying Child, one that he should not have killed, or at least had a hand in killing, but they could have considered it and like, you shouldn't have killed me because now I'm possessing you. Like, it's entirely plausible that William has no regrets for any of his actions, hence why he continued his killing after losing 2 out of his 3 children to it. I mean, like, he even sent Michael down there to see his sister possessing a robot who then also tried to kill him. So, I think it's safe to say that he probably doesn't care about losing people that he should love. He probably only had kids to actually seem normal, like those who are considered psychopaths or more commonly sociopaths. They do things to try and fit in, usually. Location. The location of the various crimes does actually really factor into its effectiveness, believe it or not. The idea that William was killing in his own Fazbear restaurants is a ridiculous concept that in reality should have gotten him sent to prison. The saying is something along the lines of like, don't crap where you eat, which some take literally, others take as don't date people you see on a regular basis, and in this scenario I suggest that it should mean don't kill people where you're seen on a regular basis or, you know, constantly because it's your own business, especially if it's the business that like targets kids. And while yes, this doesn't instantly make you guilty, but come on, the first thing that anyone would do in this situation, not even a cop, would be question everyone who was working when whatever had happened, or whoever it was disappeared. And let's be realistic, an incident the likes of the missing children's incident from 1985 would ruin a business permanently. None of this somehow they stay open bullshit, because in the real world they would end up closing permanently because no parent would want to go to a place where 5 kids went missing, especially when no bodies were found, which could maybe help them, but it certainly wouldn't help much. If Afton had any competitors, any at all, right? Even this world's version of Chuck E. Cheese, Afton should have gone there. If he had any competitors, or literally anywhere else, would have made more sense. However, he chose to kill where he eats, and that's probably one of the worst decisions that he could have made. Well, aside from, you know, the killing in the first place. Animatronics. While the animatronics are an entirely other mistake, this time around I want to talk about how stupid it was to hide the bodies in the animatronics. Like, how the f*** did he end up getting away with this? The smell of rotting bodies would already ruin the place, especially when its focus is eating pizza. The heat from the animatronic insides would speed up decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. They even started complaining that they were leaking blood and mucus, as well as smelling like death. If this was real, and William getting away with it wasn't important for the plot, he would have been caught instantly. Oh, we never found the bodies of these kids, but now these animatronics are leaking blood and smell like death. Hell, they even make bone-crushing sounds when they move. We should probably check this out. Oh look, turns out we found those missing kids. William Afton, you're under arrest for the murder of Cassidy, Fritz, Jeremy, Gabriel, Susie. Boom! Instantly. I don't know how this wasn't an open and shut case. Straight up, William was so goddamn stupid that he shouldn't have made it to the first game. Not to mention how stupid he was by building the Funtime animatronics with these item containment chambers, as he was calling it, since the cops ended up questioning him about why he made those design choices in the sister location opening scene. Plus, he superpowered the jaw of Fredbear from Fredbear's Family Diner to end up giving it a jaw that accidentally killed his son. Absolute moron. William, not the son. It wasn't his fault that he got his head shoved in there. If he had put it in there himself, it would have been his fault, but he didn't. Enemies. Now, while William did choose a set of easy marks, since, you know, kids can't really defend themselves against a dude in a part animatronic furry suit, but he's a moron for exclusively killing that demographic only. I don't know why he did that. Sure, it's easier on him, especially when he's fully combined with an animatronic, but Henry serves as the opposition to William, and the reason William ends up burning multiple times. It's not Henry's fault that he turned into Springtrap, but it's certainly his fault that he turned into Scrap Trap, since this is most likely due to the FNAF 3 fire, and the FNAF 6 fire turned him into Burn Trap. So Henry has definitely been a pain in William's side for ages. Killing Henry would have resulted in nobody being able to chase William, basically. Like, Michael might have figured it out, but he wouldn't really be in a position to do anything without Henry. Henry gave him the FNAF 3 job, probably, and definitely gave him the FNAF 6 job, so if William had just offed Henry after offing his daughter, he would have had a much easier time. At least, I'd think so. That's why every comic villain wants to kill the hero, right? Because if they do, they'll have a much easier easier time committing all their various crimes. So how is this any different? It shouldn't be. William is an absolute buffoon for not killing Henry when he had the chance. I'm sure it was Henry reporting him to the cops, like, you killed this man's daughter. Of course he's gonna have some form of vendetta against your ass. He's coming for blood and he actively tries to kill you multiple times. That's not something that you should have just ignored. You should have just killed Henry after his daughter, because honestly it makes sense. Then you kill his wife or the mother of Charlotte, as long as she's in the picture, knows about it, and actually cares, because sometimes they don't. But mom's gonna go after anyone who wronged their child, okay? Oh, that's something to witness, I'm telling you. Even my mom is vicious as hell, and she's like the sweetest woman in the world. So, you just get rid of the family, alright? Especially when it's your business partner. God, you're stupid. And while William may never have been caught for these acts, that's simply because he couldn't get caught or the plot would make no sense. So ultimately, the game had to find an excuse for his ridiculous behavior. But William could have done wonders if he had just been slightly more intelligent and maybe actually thought about things. Killing kids in your own pizzeria is horrible for business, so do that somewhere else, okay? If he had, he wouldn't have hid the bodies in the animatronics, which would have prevented the kids from attaching their souls to the animatronics that they were stuffed into. Thus, William wouldn't have had to disassemble them, which accidentally released their souls, causing him to hide in his Springtrap suit. The Spring bodysuit would have failed without him inside, thus preventing Springtrap from being created, and William wouldn't have been sealed behind a wall for 30 years. During those 30 years, he'd still be possessed by the one you should not have killed, since they didn't latch onto an animatronic in the first place, they latched onto him, and he'd be unable to properly die still, but he'd have an extra 30 years to work on bringing his kid back to life. He wouldn't have needed to send Michael to get baby from Afton Robotics' storage facility, and Michael would have ended up fine. Fazbear Frights wouldn't have opened, resulting in the place never burning down, and the FNAF 6 game wouldn't have needed to take place. There would have been no need to repair the company image in FNAF VR. William would have been probably a millionaire, and he could have used that money to study ways to bring his son back. Perhaps discovering Remnant along the way, similar to how Henry created the Ella doll in the novels. William could have poured his grief into something, watched it become possessed, and then worked on recreating that in a robot version of his dead children. If his children even died anyway. Since Fazbear's wouldn't have closed, he wouldn't have needed to open Circus Babies, resulting in Elizabeth staying alive. And since Crying Child wouldn't have seen her get scooped, he wouldn't fear the animatronics. Thus Michael not needing to put his head in the Fredbear mouth because he thought it was funny, because his brother was scared. His brother wouldn't have been scared, so Michael wouldn't have needed to do that. William also just wouldn't have supercharged Fredbear's jaw, so even if Crying Child did get his head in there, which again I guess would technically be possible, he still wouldn't have died because of it. All of this simply goes back to William's first mistake, which was choosing to kill people in his own establishment. If that first kill also wasn't his business partner's daughter, nobody would have been suspicious of him and everything would have gone his way. Okay? Afton is smart. However, he could have been a lot smarter at the start, which would have resulted in him having an easy time on his killing spree, but I guess that would make for a very interesting game series, would it?